Hello there, I'm the Serial Plagiarist, and today I wanted to talk about the Call of Duty Advanced Warfare campaign, as I feel it is greatly underappreciated when it comes to Call of Duty campaigns, especially compared to the Golden Age Call of Duty games. Specifically, I wanted to respond to the Act Man, one of the most popular gaming review channels, who has talked about Call of Duty quite a bit on his channel. His video on Advanced Warfare came out around the Black Ops Cold War days, but as someone who greatly enjoyed the campaign of this title, I felt like his arguments against the campaign were simplistic and not in-depth or insightful in the slightest. Now, some context about myself and this game. This was the first Call of Duty game I ever played. When me and my brothers got an Xbox One for Christmas in 2014, we got a bunch of free games via redeemable codes. Call of Duty Advanced Warfare was one of them. I would have been 11 years old, and our mother finally allowed us to play violent games like Call of Duty and Assassin's Creed. As such, my first Call of Duty game made such an impression on me, and even returning to Advanced Warfare as a 21-year-old in 2025, I still greatly enjoy it. After my first COD, I went back to play all the Golden Age Call of Duty games, from Modern Warfare to Black Ops 2 for reference. And I feel Advanced Warfare, while in the age of decline for the series, still had a great one-off campaign. Now, in this response to the Act Man, I'm strictly focusing on the single-player campaign. I didn't play the multiplayer back in the day, at least not properly, so I cannot comment about the Act Man's takes on that. As such, I'm going to focus on the portions where he talks about the campaign's story, presentation, and gameplay. I will leave a link in the description in regards to the full video in case you want the full context. He starts talking about the campaign specifically at the 7-minute mark of his video, so that's where we'll be starting. Let's rip in.
Now, if you were expecting more from the campaign after the 3-year development cycle, you're gonna be disappointed.
I wasn't. Let's see where you take this.
Though, is Advanced Warfare's campaign complete garbage?
No! I wouldn't call it garbage at all.
But it is highly predictable and cliché.
Actually, I think the tropes it uses has enough distinction from other stories and other Call of Duty titles to stand out.
It begins with a monologue from our protagonist Jack Mitchell. Take note of his name because it naturally means we're gonna hear a lot of this.
Mitchell.
Is this meant to be an argument against the campaign? From what I recall, this sort of game has the approach of making you immersed as the protagonist during gameplay. So from that perspective, when people refer to you as Mitchell, it's meant to make you feel like you are that character and interacting with the levels and the setting. Are you making a point about people repeatedly calling you Mitchell? Because from the clips you showed, and I've played through this campaign multiple times on all difficulties from recruit to veteran, what you showed, it's spaced out well enough through the whole campaign. Even if they don't stop calling you Mitchell, how does that detract from the experience? I think what I said before applies. This game reminded me of Halo in the sense where you are silent during gameplay and only talk when you can see the character in the cutscene. Advanced Warfare was literally following Halo's example in game design. How could that be an issue?
He talks about the human aspect of clinging on to anything that gives us purpose in life. And it's not a bad start, but so many stories begin like this. You get the sense that the narrative is gonna try to be way more dramatic than it actually is.
So the story starts with a moody monologue. So what? How is that a problem, or giving you the impression automatically that it's going to try to be more dramatic than it actually is? What? What does that mean? I don't know about you, but when I played this campaign for the first time, I thought that Mitchell's monologue, topped with the music and the shots of the advanced exosuits, played into the presentation perfectly. If I had to guess, I think the story, despite being in a futuristic setting, was trying to ground itself in reality, or at least feel like it. Advanced Warfare isn't all this campaign is gonna be. It wanted to tell a grounded story. That's my 2 cents on it anyways. The Act Man doesn't really explain much about the quote, overused setup of Advanced Warfare. He just shows a Call of Duty World War II cutscene without even comparing the two, and makes the assertion that the setup is overused. So far, I'm not convinced.
I had enlisted 6 months ago with my best friend, Will.
This is what we signed up for.
Well, the old man was a leatherneck, so I didn't really have much of a choice.
Yeah? I joined up because of the old man, too. More just to get away from him.
I signed up with my best friend Will, and only now, right before our mission, do we actually discuss why we joined the Marines. Likely to establish some character, but anyone with half a brain would notice that if he's my best friend, we likely would have talked about this before.
I don't understand what the big deal is about establishing characterization at the start of a story. They would have talked about this earlier. Sounds like a nitpick if I've ever heard one. Also, I think I actually have an in-universe reason for why they're only talking about their dads now. It's established in the story for starters that Jack Mitchell hasn't actually met Will's father before, and Will has a resentment for his father. So in context, I don't actually think it's contrived that when they bring up the topic of their dads, it's 6 months after enlistment. It sort of reminds me of the first Spider-Man movie, where despite Harry and Peter being friends for years, Peter is now only meeting Norman Osborn at the start of the movie. And the in-universe reason for that, by the way, is because Norman is incredibly busy and has neglected his son. In a similar vein, Jonathan Irons runs a private military business. So I imagine Will probably had a similar relationship with his father. So bottom line, this is such a nitpick that it doesn't even hold up with story context. The first thing Will says about his father is that he joined the Marines to get away from him.
Anyways, he's my best friend. When a story has to tell you that two people are best friends,
I'm so happy I have you as my best friend.
it almost never feels like that. This type of writing doesn't make us care.
Based on what you've shown, Mitchell has only narrated about Will being his best friend only once. And you've gone on about it multiple times, as if the game kept going on about them being best friends. From what I recall, Mitchell only refers to Will as his best friend, once during the opening monologue, and once again in the cutscene after, where Will has been killed in action.
But we got a mission to do. What is it again?
We have our orders. Inserting an LZ Epsilon. Everybody know what's going on?
No, Sarge.
Actman, let me just tell you that this dialogue is for the characters, not the audience. Cormac is not speaking to the fourth wall.
Everybody know they're going. Hoorah! Everybody ready?
No, I'm not ready.
I also think the Actman reacting this way in the heat of the cutscene is stupid. Because Mitchell right afterwards states through narration that North Korea is invading Seoul, and that the Marines have to push them back. This is the second after Cormac stops talking. The way it's presented, before we actually know what's going on, the cutscene is trying to hype us up for the mission we're about to go on. So again, not a valid complaint. I get the feeling that the Actman's entire critique is going to be silly nitpicks without sufficient explanation for how they detract from the experience. This reeks of bias against every Call of Duty title after Black Ops 2. The way I see it, Call of Duty, even on its decline, still had a lot to offer us, especially since it was only 2 years after Black Ops 2. Okay, moving on.
So Advanced Warfare takes place between 2054 and 2061. But this timeline gives the writers limitless freedom in the conflicts they can create. Like, what if a new nation sprung up? Or extraterrestrials invaded Earth? Nah, it eventually becomes the same old song and dance. America gets invaded for the 9th time.
3rd time, within the confines of the Call of Duty franchise. The trope of America being invaded in general is unrealistic, but I feel Advanced Warfare, compared to Modern Warfare 2 and Black Ops 2, sets itself apart with its own setup. In Modern Warfare 2, Makarov frames the United States for the T-word attack on the Russian airport, which consequently causes Russia to invade the nation. In Black Ops 2, it's Raul Menendez leading a T-word organization to attack America using drones. In Advanced Warfare, and I think this scenario is actually the most realistic, a powerful private military that was already incredibly powerful at the start of the story and has a monopolistic control over the world and its governments by now, launches an attack on American soil, and this attack was purely symbolic, since it is eventually repelled all in the span of one mission. So actually, I think it works in context, despite it being a familiar plot element, because instead of another country or T-word organization behind it, it's actually a private military that by now is so powerful that they had a seat in the United Nations, which is depicted in the cutscene before the mission. The game hammers home how much power Jonathan Irons had. This is literally a central theme in the campaign, as well as an emphasized element in the trailers. So the fact that the game gives us a familiar but futuristic world isn't an issue in my opinion, and I think I've demonstrated why.
So in the first mission, South Korea is being invaded by North Korea, and I can't help but feel it should be the opposite way.
Is that your complaint? That's pathetic. Who cares which side invades first? The politics behind this attack aren't elaborated on in the story, but that's fine because this is just the opening setup for everything else. This is the only mission in which Mitchell is in the Marines. And I think the inconsequential reasons why North Korea is invading the South would have just detracted from the story. It's not important in the larger scope of the story. It doesn't play a factor in anything other than the opening mission.
Kim Jong-dope leads the fight, and we are sent to stop it, I guess.
I guess? Jesus, this guy sucks at criticizing this game.
We get our first view of the cutting-edge technology, and you know, it feels kind of familiar.
The Actman doesn't even make a criticism against this part. He just says that he's reminded of the Halo 3 ODST intro. And I'm like, if ODST had such an impressionable intro, why can't this with a similar set piece? In fact, I played Advanced Warfare before ODST, and I can say that in either order, it's a great set piece. And the way the game presents it, with its sound and music, and us fast approaching Seoul, it's actually quite impressive, I'd say.
Hold on! Mitchell, close the blast shield!
Working on it.
Come on, Mitchell! Now!
Dude, shut up, I'm pressing X.
Mitchell, now!
This is the same kind of trick he pulled earlier with Cormac's speech. I know he's about to go on a rant about QuickTime events, so let's discuss that.
Alright, let me stop for a second. Can someone give me a good reason why the first thing you do is a QuickTime event?
How does a QuickTime event, where all you do is mash the X button, detract from the experience exactly? I know QuickTime events are a recurring criticism for the Actman, but seriously, what's the big deal? This sounds like a nitpick more than anything.
These things in Call of Duty, video games in general, basically never make the game any better.
Does it make the game any worse though?
I mean, they can serve as a nice finale to the action in the case of MW2, or can be a way to spice up the gameplay if integrated properly like Resident Evil 4. At the very least, QuickTime events should be used as a tutorial, but that's not the case here. Advanced Warfare kind of litters these press a button, watch something happen moments that bore the player right from the get-go.
Busting a door open? That's your example? What a joke of a criticism. What the hell's the problem with pressing X and seeing a door get busted open so you can proceed?
But once you actually land and are given control, the next bright spot appears. Level of detail.
Since he says something nice about the game, I'm going to skip over this part and go to when he criticizes the game again.
We're fighting through South Korea and then we run into these guys. Hey, isn't that your dad's crew, Will?
Will, isn't that your dad's company?
Boy, this is an odd coincidence. I don't suppose they're ever gonna show up in the future, eh?
Yeah, how dare they set up a faction that'll be relevant later? What's the issue with this again? Because from what I recall, this is all set up for when Will dies, and you meet his father for the first time, and he offers you a second chance. Obviously looking for a second son figure and whatnot. It's also established that Atlas is a private military, so they must have been hired by the US or South Korea. Shocker, they show up briefly. What a joke.
They got the best gear, the best pay. Why'd you never join?
Want to serve my country, not my old man.
Will, why didn't you sign up for your dad's squad? Oh, me? I hate my old man. You know, he's just old and he's my dad and And fuck him, you know? God, it's bad expository dialogue. Oh, so contrived.
You haven't done a good job explaining why though. This comes off like a petty gripe when the story is trying to be interconnected with all its subplots and whatnot. Doesn't sound like bad writing to me.
But you and your best friend will.
Yeah, you've definitely brought up the best friend line more times than the game itself has.
Try to plant an explosive on this ship when...
Okay, time a second. Ah!
Uh-oh. Will, you can't die. You're my best friend.
It's okay. I'll see you on the other side.
I don't know about you, but Will's final line, as well as him pushing you off as the thing explodes, it's presented as a heroic final act, topped with the music and all. How could you have a problem with this? You've only assessed one exchange that involves Will, and you ripped on it in bad faith and didn't really explain anything. You can't just play a line and expect the audience to cringe. Far many people do that with Star Wars Attack of the Clones, and it doesn't prove that the movie is bad. This might be easier than actually assessing the dialogue, but it's way less insightful. It's terrible criticism, if anything.
No.
Screw you.
It blows up, taking Will Irons with it, and your arm gets severed by a piece of debris in the process. Which, at this point, you're probably starting to wonder why didn't Mitchell scream like hell or react to any of this at all?
How dare the game let you react on your own terms to Mitchell's arm getting severed?
Totally disrupts the connection with the audience because he talks in cutscenes and whatnot, but not gameplay.
I recall you literally praised the original Halo trilogy for the same reason you're criticizing Advanced Warfare here. I guess the only difference is that the Master Chief can grunt during gameplay, but that's barely a noticeable difference. There's nothing wrong with Mitchell not talking during gameplay. Sledgehammer games obviously approach the player with a gameplay dynamic just like Halo. That's not bad game design.
But your Sergeant Cormac pulls you out of there. So America stabilized the region, and Mitchell has another monologue.
The dead, and they've settled their debts. It's up to the living to pick up the tab.
Again, sometimes the dialogue is pretty cool.
Yeah, well, I thought most of it was cool, because I enjoyed the campaign.
But all I knew was my best friend was gone.
That's the second time Mitchell says best friend based on what you showed. And it's literally a mission apart from the previous time. This is not good criticism.
At the start of the second mission, we get the infamous press F to pay respects scene.
Yeah, about that. I think the meme comes down to what system you're playing on. Keep in mind that the meme doesn't take into account Xbox or PlayStation buttons. I think this only picked up because pressing F to pay respects sounds goofy. But thinking about pressing X or square, it doesn't sound as silly, does it? So this is a PC exclusive problem, I'd say. And it's not even a large part of the game. It's just a tiny interactive moment that sounded a tad silly. And a meme was made out of it. If it wasn't F, I doubt we'd have a meme.
Like I said, QuickTime events, the way they're made in Call of Duty games, offer no value. What joy do you get in pressing a button and seeing your character's hand touch a coffin?
None. This isn't even a part of the game you're supposed to enjoy. This is presented as a sad sequence where you attend Will's funeral and pay your respects. You have the wrong mentality, and it's clear you're not even trying to follow the story as it's presented.
What part of that is advanced? It only shatters the immersion.
Sorry that the game tried to have a grounded moment. Like, for real. This is like ripping on Star Wars because it wasn't just all spectacle and spaceships and lightsabers. Oh, wait.
I imagine some executive at Sledgehammer Activision saw this scene without the button prompt and was like, nah, folks. Touching funeral scene, emotional reality, we need player interaction. Yeah, you know, this funeral scene is great, but when do I get to press a button? As if the audience is unable to distinguish the sections of gameplay from cutscenes.
Still don't understand how pressing a button detracts from the experience.
Anyways, we meet the man, the myth, the legend, Jonathan Irons, head of Atlas Corporation.
Based on how you're describing this, I'm starting to think you enjoyed this game a lot more than you're trying to let on.
Irons, I'm sorry for your loss, sir.
I'm sure you are, Sergeant. Private Mitchell, you were Will's best friend.
Screw you.
It's an unfortunate tragedy, sir.
It was more than unfortunate, Sergeant. It was unnecessary.
Damn, dude,
Son,
you're
I want to offer you
not
a
really
second
broken
chance.
up about the death of your son.
Mitchell's been discharged with his...
Are you the main villain, perhaps?
What a ridiculous leap. Not crying like a bitch and being level-headed is somehow a sign that Jonathan Irons is the villain? Yeah, let me tell you that people in real life grieve in different ways. It's not just all eternal crying and depression. So I think Advanced Warfare actually defies a common cliche when it comes to this sort of thing. Let's be real. The only reason you knew Irons would be the villain was because of Kevin Spacey. Nothing else.
But I guess neither is the player broken up because we only knew him for one mission.
Yeah, limited screen time does not automatically mean a lack of emotional investment. Weak ass argument. You pretty much skimmed through the first mission at best as well.
Irons needs to do the work of the plot and get things going, so he's here to recruit us at a very inappropriate time.
You going to explain why offering Mitchell a second chance after a funeral service is somehow inappropriate? Where's the context?
To work for Atlas, and in exchange he'll give us a sweet new arm and a dope-ass exosuit.
Yeah, there's actually nothing wrong with this part.
Next thing we know, we're infiltrating a really nice house.
He goes on to praise the game for a while, so let me just skip ahead to when he starts talking trash again.
I really wish this was more of a Citizen Kane type story about how Jonathan Irons worked his butt off to become the man he is, and you respect and admire him. But over time he becomes a huge selfish asshole when his ideals are inevitably corrupted. Sounds awesome to me.
They should have done this, or they should have done that, is the bane of my existence when it comes to criticism. You should be criticizing the story we got, instead of fantasizing about your own personal fan fiction. This isn't your story, and you are part of the audience. Criticize the game as it is, instead of coming up with a new story.
What if you even played as him for a few missions? He's made out to be the good guy helping and saving people, but then it turns out, in the business of military superpowers, you need conflicts in order to keep the cash flowing.
Since the whole what if bullshit is completely worthless, I'm gonna skip over this whole sequence. He basically just proposes alternative ideas, and again, the what if argument is not a valid way to rip on anything. He just goes on about how he should have played as Jonathan Irons, and then Will, and then suggesting we cut Mitchell out from the story entirely. It's completely bad faith, and he fails to understand the story presented. It's clear that his most valid complaint so far is, I don't like it.
Speaking of making it personal, that's one of the reasons why we aren't invested in the conflicts and wars. This is a big pitfall I've highlighted before. When video game narratives become so plot-focused instead of character-focused, it makes it hard to connect to the story. It needs a personal element. Mitchell doesn't speak during gameplay, and none of the other members of his crew are personally affected by any of this.
Are you fucking kidding me?
That scene in MW3 when Makarov releases the gas and we see that play out through a family's video camera is just so visceral. Really showcases the horror. Nothing like that in Advanced Warfare.
You have skimmed over the campaign in general. You don't assess any of the set pieces as it's presented. For fuck's sake, for someone as successful as you, couldn't you at least talk about the campaign from beginning to end, instead of making sweeping statements that don't even hold up to critical thought? You're ignoring the campaign rather than critiquing it. If any regular viewers wonder why I have a habit of going into extreme detail about the stuff I talk about, that is why. I want to keep absolutely everything in mind, and not skip over anything.
So we get teased by the apparent bad guy in technophobe Hades, whose goal is to rid the world of technology. He leads yet another generic, uninspired, motivationless terrorist organization called the KVA.
Do you want this fictional story to rationalize T-wordism? I don't even understand the complaint here. Dehumanizing Hades and his faction is not bad writing whatsoever. The KVA is written as irrational and violent by design.
As a member of Atlas, you're tasked with stopping them, which includes rescuing the Nigerian Prime Minister, attempting to prevent a nuclear meltdown, and playing Frogger.
Sounds exciting, actually. And that Frogger sequence was actually a pretty outside-the-box idea to insert in a level. If you can dodge traffic, you can dodge a T-word.
Sandwiched between are cutscenes of Mitchell, Gideon, and Joker, slightly developing their characters, and oh snap!
As you were, son. As you were.
Is there something we can help you with, sir?
Well, a glass would be a start.
Say what you will about Kevin Spacey,
Yeah, skipping ahead to when he says something negative again.
but as far as characters that suck, Ilona, the ex-Spetsnaz Russian woman, she's awful.
Let's hear your reasons why.
At first, Mitchell is giving this super edgy, dope description of her. Then he says,
She could be your best friend or your worst nightmare. But once she got under your skin,
Please, Pierre, work with me. Let us help each other.
it was all over.
no, yeah, she basically asks nicely. Wow, what an advanced interrogation tactic.
You must think this is the very start of the interrogation, but I can guarantee this was at the very end, after presumably hours at the very least. It's clear in context, Ilona is playing good cop when Pierre has reached his limit. Like, you can clearly see his beat up face. It doesn't take a doctor to notice that.
After this, she doesn't really do anything cool. Something is so unconvincing in her voice.
They're functional. I'll give them that.
Yeah, one example, with no context to boot. Also, you are joking, right? You don't remember Greece or the Escape from Atlas mission? This is a joke.
So anyways, fake bad guy Hades and the KVA kill some people, COD villain standard, and eventually you're tasked with taking him down. Which you do, after a fight scene that contradicts how powerful the exosuits are supposed to be.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure that Hades was presented to us as an overachieving combatant and T-word mastermind. This isn't an issue whatsoever. Also, in case you forgot, Hades is killed in the sequence you just showed. So actually, he met his match.
Hades conveniently hands you a flash drive, and dude, you know better than to put that in your computer.
Yeah, I'm sure it was scanned for viruses beforehand. Ilona didn't just stick it in her laptop willy-nilly. You'd know this if you actually played the game.
In a shocking twist, Jonathan Irons is shown to have known about the KVA attacks beforehand. You know, the problem with this twist is it's not a twist. Everyone saw it coming. Kevin Spacey is known for playing some of the greatest villains in cinema, and a person with that level of sophistication in a private military unbound by the laws of any other country, well, you expect the worst to happen.
Fun fact. I was not aware of Kevin Spacey's reputation of being a villain in almost everything he was in. So I was actually caught off guard by this moment. I also find this criticism to be worthless because instead of criticizing the story on its own grounds, he just takes the actor's reputation and uses that to say this was bad writing. Yeah, well, as someone who didn't know about Kevin Spacey's resume, I was in for a genuine surprise. So in its own terms, and without the preconceived bias or knowledge of the actor, it's actually a good twist. This is also an external problem rather than an internal one, and none of this falls on Advanced Warfare.
This ain't nothing like the revelation near the end of Black Ops 1.
That was a better plot twist, I will admit, but the difference is that Gary Oldman is known for playing heroes as well, such as Commissioner Gordon in the Dark Knight trilogy. Again, the Kevin Spacey thing is an external problem rather than an internal one. I'm someone who is not aware of Kevin Spacey's reputation, so I think my judgment on this twist is actually a lot fairer and more unbiased than yours.
Also, some things about these really important scenes are left unanswered. Why didn't Irons just pretend like he didn't believe the technologist? Why kill him at all?
It's clear here that Irons didn't know he was being recorded, and he clearly executed the guy to cover up the attack, and then covered the murder up. I mean, the guy was in Atlas custody after all. Jonathan Irons could probably make up any story he wanted.
Matter of fact, how was this video recorded? By who? And why?
Hades! For fuck's sake. The who and why is pretty obvious. And how? I don't know. Maybe Hades had a tracker on the dude he kidnapped that recorded this 3D video. Why does this matter?
If you're suspicious about being recorded, why kill someone in a location where that could happen?
This is pathetic nitpicking if I've ever seen it.
How did Hades get this video recording, and why would he have the proof on him when he died, let alone give it to us?
In case you forgot, Hades was in hiding for 4 years after the attack. And do you think anyone would have taken him seriously if he somehow got the recording out? In fact, in this sequence, Gideon automatically questions this, asking how they know it's not fake, indicating that something like this is fakeable.
How does Jonathan Irons know we were even watching this recording in the first place?
How is that a plot hole? We were in his building. Is it too much to suspend our disbelief that he got an alert or something from his security system and he saw Mitchell and friends witness his dark deed?
You could tear the story apart on its logical fallacies.
Logical fallacies? What a joke.
The story's latter half is all about taking down Atlas, and it was pretty cool playing for that side. That was something new. At first, Gideon sides with Irons, then you and Alona meet up with Mitchell's old sergeant, Cormac, team up together. Psych, Gideon is actually a homie, now he's with us.
Are you going to criticize this story or what? You're just skimming through it.
Mitchell and the gang look for evidence of Irons planning an attack because the footage could have been altered. They find Project Manticore, blah blah blah, people die, Irons declares war on everybody at the UN, not exactly a smart move.
Yeah, he doesn't make a direct threat. In actuality, he says that the world's problems begin with you, as in the United Nations. It's only Sentinel that knows that he actually meant that as a threat he was going to act on.
I doubt even this private military could launch an assault on the rest of the world. What does he even hope to accomplish by doing that? You're the world's problems. I'll kill you and the world will be perfect. Just kill all the world's leaders.
Irons has monopolistic power, and whether you believe he could invade the United States is irrelevant. This is not a realistic story. Believability is what you're looking for. I also can't believe that you can't piece together his motive to destroy all the governments and then replace them with Atlas so that he can make all the decisions as a de facto dictator. And he's exploited events in a way where he can feasibly achieve that within the confines of the story. World domination sounds like quite high stakes, doesn't it? So what's your problem here?
Flash forward and we track down Irons, who for the third time has put himself in harm's way with hardly any protection, bodyguards for no reason at all, just to gloat in our face.
Are you fucking kidding me?
Chase him down, and ooh, it's not looking good for you, Jonathan.
What are you doing? Mitchell! I gave you that arm! Mitchell! I gave you a second chance! Mitchell!
I love how you don't even appreciate the unspoken symbolism of giving the arm back to Irons, right after he states that he gave you a second chance, using the arm as the example.
And the story ends right there. No follow-up at all.
Yeah, it's a damn shame we didn't get a sequel. I thought the story had a lot of potential for a follow-up.
To summarize my thoughts, Gideon, Joker, and Irons are all cool. They each have their moments. Mitchell has some insightful monologues. Everyone else, forgettable.
You didn't even talk much about any of them aside from Alona and Hades. So I can't trust your judgment until you explain your thoughts on all of them.
I do love the speech Irons gives about solving the world's problems, but in a lot of ways this story is just another United States gets invaded type story. We've seen that 100 times.
As I've argued, the setup to this familiar trope is actually unique. Moving on.
But is Advanced Warfare something you might want to go back to play for fun?
Yes!
Kind of.
Keep moving up! Welcome!
Oh, I remember that. So cool.
It was entertaining jumping around, grappling. Most of the mechanics and gameplay encounters were well done. The threat grenades were a lot of fun. Except for the level design, which is so linear and restrictive. For instance, the game gives you these mag gloves, which look and sound really cool, right? But you don't ever get the freedom to use them outside of a scripted sequence where you basically have no control. It's just to pad out the runtime.
For like what, 20 seconds? Gee, you're acting like those mags are used to waste your time. They aren't.
First mission, walking alongside tanks. Oh, you left the mission area. Dog, I was just following the action.
If you can't follow the objective, that's on you.
Sledgehammer confines you to play this game exactly the way they want you to. You look at any other great first-person shooter and most of them have more open levels where you can explore even just a little bit, find secrets, and Call of Duty needs that.
You haven't really demonstrated why this so-called problem is a problem. Going out of bounds is not a demonstration of linearity. A game not letting you go everywhere is not restrictive gameplay.
Did y'all never play Black Ops 2?
Yeah, let's use one mission from Black Ops 2 that's designed to be expansive and open, and use that to demonstrate why Advanced Warfare is restrictive. Straw man.
It's ironic that we have all this new age tech, a heads-up display through projections on the weapons, yet this new technology couldn't allow the designers to break free from what has been the series' greatest flaw. Extremely linear campaigns.
If this is a recurring flaw with COD campaigns, why are you singling Advanced Warfare out? This is totally unfair of you.
Especially with the new movement, they had to put in all sorts of invisible barriers, which sucks.
I don't know about you, but it looks to me like you don't have enough elevation to get over the railing that's preventing you from getting onto the catwalk. Maybe try jumping a little higher, or if you can't do that, use the stairs.
A couple of missions do stand out, like Manhunt, where you use a drone to circle the perimeter of a building, taking out guys, watching your crew move up. It's really unique and definitely would put that in one of my favorite COD missions.
Yeah, that was awesome.
Sentinel has you sneak through a base, giving you the sandbox tools at your disposal. And this is what I want to see more of. Open-ended missions, more than one way to play them. It creates replay value.
Those two are probably some of my favorite COD missions too, but that doesn't mean the rest fell flat on their faces. And so far, you haven't really demonstrated why, beyond straw-manning low elevation jumps as restrictive gameplay.
And they let you use the grapple hook freely. Whereas in the other sections, you simply use it to go up when the game tells you to go up.
Can you demonstrate that, please? Please?
Most of the mechanics like overdrive dashing, the shield, throwing doors, though interesting, you hardly ever feel like you need to use those things.
Not using equipment is not a problem with the game. If you don't want to use them, that's on you. They gave you the choice.
Again, great ideas, mediocre execution. I think my biggest issue, and the disappointment of many people, can be summarized as Advanced Warfare can be played the exact same way as any other Call of Duty. It should have been different.
And finished. Okay, the Axeman has a little more to say about the campaign, but it's more generalized conclusion stuff. As someone who greatly enjoyed the Advanced Warfare campaign, I hated this video talking shit about the campaign. The Axeman doesn't get his point across effectively, and he skims through the story and gameplay set pieces, just to get to the parts he wants to talk about. It's overly simplistic and doesn't have a lot of regard for the campaign as a whole. I have to wonder if this is part of some agenda that Call of Duty was all on the decline after Black Ops 2, and the campaigns were mediocre or bad afterwards. Yeah, well, with Advanced Warfare at least, it had a really good campaign, I thought. Had a lot of potential for a sequel, and I heard that there is a cult following of people like me who felt the same about the campaign, so there is appreciation for this part of the game. I cannot speak about the multiplayer or zombies, but regardless, when we're talking about the campaign, I'd say it's pretty great. Fun, replayable, impressionable. And I feel the same way about it than I did in 2014. If I had to list at least one actual problem, it's that I disliked how they phased Joker out of the story when switching over to Sentinel. Like, what happened to him? Why don't we see him again? Aside from that, the campaign's great. 9 out of 10. I'm JJ Plagiarisms. And until next time, what are stories but mystery boxes?